Okay, yeah, so I've had a couple of questions about homemade scrumpy. The questions I've had were actually on Facebook. But to answer them, what I thought I'd do is a short video to answer these questions, in which case the scrumpy has gone wrong, or it's not turned out very drinkable. But yeah, I thought I'd do a little video to explain what went wrong, the causes, and I thought it may help someone else out there. So the questions I've had, a couple of questions, is that they made homemade scrumpy, which is what I specialise in now, and it tastes bitter and vinegary, and or it tastes yeasty. Now then, I'll explain why it tastes bitter and vinegary, and then I'll go on to explain why it tastes, or possible causes of why it tastes yeasty. Now the main cause of any brew really, whether it's wine, beer or scrumpy, why it turns or it tastes bitter and vinegary is because of bacteria. And also a possible cause is exposing it to the air longer than need be. But the main is bacteria. It's getting into your brew. So only expose it to the air for a minimal time as possible, shortest time possible. That's why you use an airlock when you're transferring it from your demijohn to your bottles. But the main is bacteria. You've not sterilised your equipment, and that's why in my homebrew videos explaining how to make scrumpy, I always emphasise clean your equipment, sterilise your equipment, because that is the main cause of your brew going wrong, tasting of bitter and vinegary. There are good cleaners out there, sterilisers and what have you, but I just simply use bleach for the demijohn, just a couple of squirts, bit of hot water, not warmish water, swirl it round, flush it out with fresh clear water a few times, obviously make sure there's no bleach left in it, and that's sterilised then. Same with your bottles. Siphon tube, if you use them. I don't use a siphon tube. Must be sterilised, even down to your crown caps. So just make sure your demijohn, your bottles, siphon tube, crown caps, anything that comes into contact with the liquid must be sterilised. So that's the main, and I think the main reason why a scrumpy turns out bittery or vinegary. Now then, for a scrumpy to turn out yeasty, tasting of yeast can be a few things. First and foremost, never use a bread yeast. Always use homebrew yeast. For scrumpy, you can use a beer yeast, a wine yeast, or a cider yeast. I would recommend using a cider yeast if you're making scrumpy. Obviously, always get yourself decent quality cider yeast. And also, it's what can cause a yeasty flavour is bottling or fermenting shorter, i.e. it's not, all the yeast hasn't converted all the sugar to alcohol, and you've still got a lot of yeast in your liquid. Fermenting too short a time, bottling too early. You've noticed once your airlock stops bubbling, or if you use a hydrometer, you can really tell exactly when it stopped fermenting. You'll see the liquid, it'll start to clear. What that is, that's the yeast. It's turned nearly, hopefully 100% of the sugar into alcohol, and it's died. It'll die, and you'll see it, and a sediment will form at the bottom, and that is dead yeast. So that's a possible cause, is you're bottling too early. And another cause is you're bottling, or once it's finished fermenting and the yeast has died down, you've left it in that demijohn for too long. Always bottle it as soon as you can, because what will happen is, okay, the yeast has died, it's dropped to the bottom of the demijohn, but if you leave it there too long in contact with the liquid, with the scrumpy, that dead yeast will start to get reabsorbed back into the liquid, and that can make your scrumpy taste yeasty. Another thing is, once you've bottled it, either if you've got to make it still or sparkling, you'll still get a bottle in your bottom of your bottle, you'll have a yeast deposit in the bottom. Now it's all to do with the pouring then. What you can do is pour the entire contents of the bottle into another bottle or into a jug, a bigger container or something. Say you've got a pint glass and a half pint glass. You pour the half pint into your glass, drink it and what have you. And then you try and get a bit more, you know, the second half, the second pint. You'll always get a little bit of yeast, or 9 times out of 10 you will. And that can cause, it doesn't ruin the cider, but it will make it taste a bit yeasty. Like I say, it's don't worry if it does happen. It'll just make your scrumpy a bit cloudy, but it won't actually ruin the drink. It'll just make it taste a bit more yeasty. So that's it. I hope that answers your questions. Why a scrumpy turns out bitter and vinegary is bacteria. Clean your equipment. Can't not emphasise it enough. And also that's the few reasons why it can taste yeasty as well. So I hope that helps.